The queen was walking upstairs when she heard a soft moan from Amma's room. Her heart raced as she pressed her ear to the door. She heard Amma's faint voice. She moaned with excitement. "Is someone in there?" the queen thought. With shaky hands, she pushed the door open. "Amma?" she called out, stepping inside. Amma was lying on her big, soft bed. Her blankets were twisted around her, and she was turning from side to side. Her face was radiant, lit with an expression of pure joy, as if she were completely lost in a moment of bliss. The strange moaning continued, and the queen's heart sank. "Amma, wake up!" the queen said, rushing to her daughter's side. She gently shook her, her voice louder this time. "Amma, wake up now!" The princess groaned and turned her head slowly. Her eyes fluttered open, and she blinked at her mother, looking confused. "Mom, why are you waking me up?" Amma asked, her voice sleepy. The queen knelt beside her, holding her hand tightly. "Baby, you were moaning in your sleep," she said softly. "I thought you were having a bad dream. Can you tell me what happened?" Amma sat up a little and rubbed her eyes. She looked around the room as if checking for something. Then she shook her head. "Mom, I'm fine," she said quickly. "I wasn't dreaming. I'm okay." The queen frowned. "Are you sure?" she said, her voice full of worry. "I'm sure," Amma said, lying back down. "It's nothing, Mom. You should go back to sleep." The queen stood up slowly, her eyes scanning the room one last time. She didn't see anything unusual, but her heart still felt uneasy. "All right, Amma," she said. "Good night." "Good night, Mom," Amma replied, turning over and closing her eyes. Princess Amma is the only child of the great King Solomon of Orba village. She was not just beautiful, she was breathtaking. Her smooth, glowing skin, sparkling eyes, and graceful walk made everyone in the village stop and stare whenever she passed. Amma's life was special, but it wasn't simple. When she turned 20, her parents, King Solomon and Queen Mara, called her into the grand sitting room. "My daughter," the king said, his voice warm but firm, "it is time for you to choose a husband. Your husband will become king after me. He will sit on this throne." The queen nodded, adding, "We want you to find someone you love, but we also need you to think of the kingdom." "You're the only heir." Amma smiled politely and nodded, but deep inside she wasn't ready. 5 years passed, and many suitors came to the palace, wealthy merchants and even princes from faraway lands. But Amma rejected all of them. "I don't like him," she would say each time her parents asked about a new suitor. The king and queen grew frustrated. They tried to reason with her, even argued, but Amma would not budge. "I won't marry someone I don't love," she insisted. One evening, the king decided enough was enough. He knocked on Amma's bedroom door and entered, his face serious. The princess was sitting by her window, brushing her long hair. The moonlight shone on her, making her look like a painting. "Amma," the king began, sitting beside her, "I have done everything I can to help you find a husband. I am not getting any younger, and I wish to see my grandchildren before I leave this world." His voice softened. "Since you won't choose, I have made a decision. We will hold a contest here in the palace. All the eligible men will come, and you will choose one to marry." Amma frowned. "Father, I can't just pick someone like that. Marriage is forever." After much arguing, the princess finally agreed. "Fine," she said, "but I have one condition. I must date him for 4 months before we get married." The king sighed in relief. "Very well. 4 months it is." That night, as the palace grew silent, Princess Amma lay in her bed. She closed her eyes and soon fell asleep. Her dream started sweetly. She was in a beautiful garden filled with flowers of every color. Then a man appeared. He was tall, strong, and so handsome that Amma's heart skipped a beat. He smiled at her, and it felt like they had known each other forever. "You are my wife," he said, holding her hand. Amma felt warmth rush through her. They danced, laughed, and soon they were in each other's arms. He kissed her gently, and the world around them seemed to disappear. They were alone, lost in their love. Suddenly, the dream changed. Amma was no longer in the garden. She was back in her bedroom, and the same man was there. But this time, he wasn't a dream. He was real, or at least it felt real. He sat beside her, his eyes piercing and his smile mischievous. Before she could speak, he leaned forward and kissed her. When she woke up, she gasped, sitting up straight. Her heart was racing and her cheeks were warm. She touched her lips, remembering the kiss. "It felt so real," she whispered to herself. "Too real." Amma glanced around her room, her eyes darting to the corners. Everything was quiet, just as it always was. but deep inside she felt like something, or someone, had been there. She pulled her blanket tightly around her, both scared and thrilled. This wasn't the first time she had dreamed of the mysterious man. For years, she had seen him in her dreams. He always came to her, always whispered sweet things, always made her feel things she couldn't explain, but she had never told anyone about it. Not her maids, not her friends, not even her mother. The big contest day finally arrived, and the whole village gathered at the square. It was a day full of excitement and celebration. Colorful decorations hung everywhere, children laughed as they chased each other, and music filled the air. There were dances, drummers, and storytellers keeping the crowd entertained. When it was time for the eligible bachelors to present themselves, a loud gong was struck. Everyone became quiet as the first young man stepped onto the stage. He introduced himself with confidence, telling the crowd about his achievements and why he should be chosen. The villagers clapped politely, but Amma didn't seem impressed. One by one, the men came forward. Some were strong politicians, others were wealthy traders. Each one tried to show why they were the best choice for the princess, but none caught Amma's interest. Then, a young man walked up to the stage, and the crowd gasped. He was tall, with a charming smile and a confident stride. He picked up the microphone, and his deep voice echoed across the square. "My name is Mark," he said, smiling warmly. "I am an international businessman. I promise that if I am chosen, I will love the princess with all my heart and treat her like a queen." The crowd cheered loudly, and even Amma's mother, the queen, nodded in approval. Amma couldn't take her eyes off him. She leaned toward the king and whispered with a shy smile, "I think he's the one." The king smiled back, pleased to see his daughter finally show interest in someone. That was how Princess Amma and Mark began their relationship. At first, everything felt like a fairy tale. It was the princess's first time being in love, and she adored it. She and Mark would talk on the phone for hours, laughing and sharing stories. They went on beautiful dates, strolled through the village markets, and shopped together for little trinkets. Mark treated Amma like a treasure, and she felt truly happy. One day, Amma decided to visit Mark at his home. It was a warm afternoon, and his house was quiet and cozy. They talked, laughed, and spent hours together. Then one thing led to another, and Mark gently took her hand. Before she realized it, they were sharing an intimate moment. That day, Mark took her virginity. Later that night, Amma sat alone in her room. Her heart was racing as she thought about what had just happened. But as she replayed the moment in her mind, she felt confused. "Is that what it's supposed to feel like?" she whispered to herself. "I thought it would be more special. The dreams I've had are so much better. They feel more real, more magical. Maybe next time will be different." She sighed deeply, unsure of how to feel. Then her phone rang, breaking her thoughts. It was Mark. She answered quickly, "Hello, Mark." Before she could finish, Mark's panicked voice cut her off. "I'm finished, princess. My house is on fire. Everything is gone." Amma's heart dropped. "What? Mark, are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. But Mark hung up before she could say another word. The next day, Amma rushed to check on him. She found him sitting outside his burned-down house, looking lost and broken. His once confident smile was gone. From that day, everything seemed to fall apart for Mark. First, he lost his biggest business contract. Then scammers tricked him, stealing all his money. Within a month, the once successful businessman had nothing. Mark became distant, and Amma noticed the change. One evening, he called her to talk. His voice was heavy with sadness. "Amma," he began, "I can't do this anymore. I need to focus on rebuilding my life. I can't give you the love and care you deserve right now." Amma's heart shattered. "No, Mark, please don't do this. I love you. We can get through this together," she cried. But Mark had already made up his mind. "I'm sorry, princess," he said softly. "You deserve better than me right now." With that, their relationship ended. Amma cried for days, her heart aching in a way she had never felt before. A few months after her heartbreak with Mark, Princess Amma's best friend, Helen, came to visit. Helen wasn't alone. She brought her brother, James, who had just returned from living abroad for many years. When Princess Amma saw James, her heart skipped a beat. He was tall, handsome, and had a warm smile that made her feel shy. James seemed to feel the same way about her. His eyes sparkled every time he looked at her, and by the end of the day, it was clear that they both liked each other. Not long after, James and Amma started dating. Their relationship felt like magic. They spent hours talking, walking through the royal gardens and sharing dreams about the future. Amma was finally happy again. But just when everything seemed perfect, strange things began to happen. James applied to renew his visa so he could return abroad, but it was denied. He tried again and again, but nothing worked. Then, he lost his job at home, and his savings disappeared because of unexpected problems. One evening, James came to Amma's room. He looked sad and tired. "Amma," he said softly, "I can't do this anymore. I have nothing to offer you now. I need to fix my life." Amma's heart broke. "No, James, we can get through this together," she said, tears streaming down her face. But James shook his head. "I love you, Amma, but I can't drag you into my struggles. I'm sorry." And just like that, James left her life. Amma cried herself to sleep that night, feeling like her world was falling apart again. Over the next year, Amma tried to move on. She met 2 other men, both kind and caring, and started relationships with them. But every time, the same thing happened. At first, everything seemed perfect, but then their lives would fall apart. One lost his business, the other got sick and broke things off because he couldn't handle the stress. Amma became scared. "Why does this keep happening to me?" she wondered. She couldn't understand why every man she loved ended up losing everything. Finally, one night, she couldn't keep it to herself anymore. She sat down with her parents, the king and queen, and told them everything. She told them about Mark, James, and the other men. Her parents listened carefully, and the king's face grew serious. "Amma," he said, "I think there is more to this. I know a great chief priest who might help us understand what is happening. We will visit him tomorrow." The next morning, they traveled to a faraway village to meet the chief priest. His shrine was dark and filled with the smell of burning herbs. The priest, an old man with piercing eyes, sat quietly as they explained Amma's story. After listening, the priest began chanting and performing rituals. The room felt heavy, and Amma's heart raced. Finally, the priest looked up and said, "Princess Amma, you have a spirit husband. He is jealous and does not want you to be with anyone else. That is why all the men in your life suffer misfortune." Amma gasped. "A spirit husband?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "Yes," the priest said, "but do not worry. There is a way to break his hold on you. You must perform a ritual to send him away." The priest gave them a long list of items to buy: white cloth, special herbs, a goat, and other sacred things. The royal family did as he instructed, and a week later the ritual was performed. It was a long and dramatic ceremony. Drummers played, fires burned, and the priest chanted loudly as Amma kneeled in the center of the shrine. She felt dizzy, as though something was being pulled out of her. Finally, the priest declared, "It is done. The spirit husband is gone." 2 months later, Amma met a man named Kingsley. He was rich, young, and very handsome. Kingsley didn't waste time. He told Amma, "I don't believe in long dating. I know you are the one I want. Let's get married." Amma thought about everything she had been through. She decided that maybe love didn't have to take forever. "Yes," she said, "let's get married." The royal wedding was the biggest event the village had ever seen. People came from far and wide to celebrate with Princess Amma. The palace was decorated with gold and flowers, and the air was filled with music and laughter. When they got home that night, Kingsley was filled with joy. He had waited for this night for so long, their first night as husband and wife. As soon as they stepped into their bedroom, Kingsley couldn't hold back. He gently pulled Amma close and began kissing her, and Amma smiled softly. But just as things were getting heated, Amma pulled away. "Wait," she said, "let me freshen up first." Kingsley nodded, though he looked a little disappointed. Amma went into the bathroom, washed her face, and tried to steady her thoughts. She stared at herself in the mirror. "This is my husband," she whispered to herself. "This is real, no more dreams." She wanted everything to be perfect tonight. When she came back to the bed, Kingsley welcomed her with open arms. They made love, and Kingsley was gentle and caring. But when it was over, Amma lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She felt empty. "So no man can ever make me feel like the man in my dreams," she thought to herself. "I hate to admit it, but sometimes I miss him." Amma closed her eyes, frustrated and confused. She didn't know when she fell asleep, but at midnight something strange happened. A cold breeze swept through the room, even though the windows were closed. Suddenly, the man from her dreams appeared. He was tall, handsome, and had eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. Amma's heart raced. The man leaned closer and she felt his touch. It was soft, yet it sent shivers through her body. Part of her thought it was just another dream. Beside her, Kingsley lay fast asleep, unaware of what was happening. By morning, Amma woke up feeling exhausted. She sat on the bed, her head heavy with guilt and confusion. Kingsley was still sleeping. Amma decided to make breakfast for him. She went to the kitchen and prepared his favorite meal, eggs, toast, and fresh juice. Carefully placing it on a tray, she carried it back to the bedroom. "Wake up, baby," she said softly, placing the tray on the bedside table. "I made you breakfast in bed. Come on before it gets cold." She gently tapped Kingsley's shoulder. "Kingsley? Wake up," she said again, a little louder this time. But Kingsley didn't move. His body felt stiff under her touch. Amma's heart began to race. "Kingsley!" she screamed, shaking him harder now. Still, there was no response. His skin felt cold and his face was pale. Amma's hands trembled as she realized the truth. Kingsley was gone. "No, no, no!" Amma cried, shaking him violently as tears streamed down her face. "Kingsley, please wake up, don't leave me." After the burial, Princess Amma returned to the palace, but everything felt different. The once lively and cheerful princess was gone. Amma rarely smiled, and her laughter, which used to fill the palace halls, was now just a memory. She felt trapped, like a dark cloud was always following her. Deep down, she knew something was wrong, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't figure it out. Her parents, the king and queen, were heartbroken seeing their daughter like this. They couldn't bear to see her suffer anymore. One day, the queen said, "We need to do something. We can't watch her fade away like this." The king nodded and decided to consult a well-known priestess in the village. When they reached the priestess, the old woman looked at Amma with piercing eyes. "Your spirit is heavy," she said. "Something dark is holding on to you. To break free, you must go to the village river, take a bath there, and leave sacrifices. A goat, drinks, and other offerings." Amma felt tired of all the rituals, but she was desperate for peace. She agreed. The next night, they went to the river. She was nervous, but she prayed silently, hoping this would end her torment. When the ritual was over, Amma felt lighter. Days turned into weeks, and for the first time in years, the dream stopped. Amma finally began to believe that her life might return to normal. Months later, Amma met Ray. He was kind, gentle, and full of life. They became friends first, spending hours talking and laughing. Ray treated Amma like a treasure, always making her feel special. One sunny afternoon, Ray took her hand and said, "Amma, will you be my girlfriend?" Amma hesitated for a moment, but her heart was full of joy. "Yes," she said, smiling for the first time in what felt like forever. They fell deeply in love, and Amma's happiness returned. Ray proposed to her in the most romantic way, with flowers and a heartfelt speech. "You are my everything, Amma. Will you marry me?" he asked. Tears filled her eyes as she said, "Yes, I will." The palace was alive again, and everyone began preparing for the big traditional wedding. On the wedding day, the village was buzzing with excitement. People danced, sang, and ate delicious food as they waited for the groom's family to arrive. But evening came, and Ray's family was nowhere to be seen. The king and queen exchanged worried glances. Amma kept checking her phone, but Ray wasn't answering. Suddenly, the king's phone rang. His face turned pale as he listened. "What?" he whispered. No, this can't be." The queen rushed to his side. "What is it?" she asked. The king's voice trembled as he spoke. "Ray was in an accident on his way here. He didn't make it. 2 of his friends also died." Amma froze, her mind unable to process the words. No, that's not true," she screamed. Her legs gave way and she collapsed to the ground. People rushed to her side, fanning her and shouting her name, but she didn't respond. Amma woke up in the hospital hours later. Her parents were by her side, their faces wet with tears. Amma didn't cry, she didn't say a word. She stared at the ceiling, her face blank, her heart broken into a million pieces. When she returned to the palace, Amma was no longer the same. She didn't talk to anyone. Sometimes she would sit in one spot, staring at nothing for hours. The king and queen tried everything to bring back their daughter's spark. They told her jokes, brought her gifts, and even hired entertainers. But nothing worked. Amma locked herself in her room for days at a time. The servants would leave food outside her door, but most days she wouldn't touch it. She was like a shadow of the happy girl she used to be. 6 months had passed since the tragedy with Ray, and Princess Amma's life had only grown darker. Her once beautiful smile had faded, and even her glowing skin seemed dull. It was as though life had left her. One afternoon, Helen, Amma's closest friend, returned from the States. She had heard whispers about the princess's troubles, but didn't know how bad things had become. Helen rushed to the palace to see her friend. After speaking with the queen, she headed straight to Amma's room. "Amma needs help," the queen said, her voice heavy with worry. Helen nodded and opened the door slowly. Inside, the room was quiet and dark, with the curtains drawn. Amma sat on the bed, staring blankly at the wall. She didn't even notice Helen had entered. Helen walked closer and said softly, "Amma, it's me. Helen, I've been trying to call you for months, but your phone has been off. What's going on?" Amma didn't move. She just sat there, her eyes distant, as if she were trapped in another world. Helen knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Amma, talk to me. Say something. I'm here for you." Still, Amma remained silent. Helen squeezed her hands tighter, her voice trembling with emotion. "Amma, look at yourself. You were the most beautiful, cheerful, and loving person I knew. What happened to you? Why are you letting your problems win? This isn't you. You're a fighter, Amma. I've always known you to be strong. Whatever is going on, you can beat it. You're a star, Amma. Remember, no one throws stones at an empty tree. You are valuable, and that's why this is happening. Please, fight for yourself." At those words, tears began to roll down Amma's cheeks. She looked at Helen for the first time, her voice barely above a whisper. "Helen, I'm so tired. I've been fighting for so long. I don't know when this nightmare began, and I don't know if it will ever end. Every time the spirit husband comes to me, it feels like a dream, but it's not. I know it's real. Once I even saw him leaving my room, but I couldn't move or scream. I've never had an orgasm with any man except him, Helen. And now I'm afraid to love again, afraid to try. Every relationship ends in tears, and I just want to give up." Helen's heart broke hearing her friend's pain. She wiped Amma's tears and held her hands firmly. "Amma, I know you're tired, but have you tried God? Have you called on Jesus Christ? He is stronger than anything, even a spirit husband. He can set you free." Amma hesitated, her eyes searching Helen's face. "But what if it doesn't work?" Helen smiled gently. "It will, Amma. God never fails. You just have to trust him. Come on, get dressed. We're going to church." At first, Amma resisted, but Helen wouldn't take no for an answer. She found a simple dress for Amma to wear and helped her get ready. Together, they left for Helen's church. When they arrived, the church was filled with people singing and clapping their hands. The music was powerful, and Amma could feel something stirring in her heart. It was small, like a flicker of hope, but it was there. Helen introduced her to the pastor, who listened carefully to Amma's story. "God will fight this battle for you," he said firmly, "but you must let him into your heart." The pastor prayed over Amma, laying his hands on her head. The entire congregation joined in, their voices rising together in a powerful prayer. Amma felt something she hadn't felt in years, a warmth, a lightness, as though a heavy weight was being lifted from her shoulders. Helen bought her a Bible and promised to walk this journey with her. "You're not alone, Amma. God is with you, and so am I," she said with a reassuring smile. For the first time in a long time, Amma felt a spark of hope. 1 month after Princess Amma started going to church, the pastor organized a special deliverance session for her. The entire church prayed for her, their voices loud and powerful. Amma knelt at the altar, tears streaming down her face as the pastor laid his hands on her head. "Every chain holding this daughter of God, break now," the pastor declared. Amma felt a sudden warmth wash over her, like a bright light filling her heart. For the first time in years, she felt free, light as a feather. When the prayers ended, Amma stood up. For the first time in a long while, she smiled. It wasn't forced, it was real. That night, she slept peacefully, and for the first time, the following weeks were like a fresh beginning for Amma. She read her Bible daily, prayed fervently, and never missed church. Her laughter returned, her eyes sparkled again, and her parents were overjoyed to see their daughter happy. The months flew by, and soon it had been 6 months since Amma gave her life to Christ. One Sunday morning, Amma dressed up in a beautiful blue gown for church. She got into her car, humming a hymn she loved. But as she drove along a quiet road, her car suddenly stopped. Amma tried starting it again, but nothing worked. Frustrated, she pulled out her phone to call her mechanic, but he didn't pick up. She stood by her car, unsure of what to do. The sun was already getting hot, and sweat trickled down her face. Just as she began to feel stranded, a sleek black car slowed down and stopped beside her. A tall, handsome man stepped out. "Good morning, miss," he said with a warm smile. "Do you need help?" Amma hesitated but nodded. "My car broke down and I can't reach my mechanic." The man introduced himself as Prince George. He quickly called his own mechanic, who arrived within minutes and fixed Amma's car. "Thank you so much," Amma said, relieved. "It's my pleasure," George replied. "May I have your number? Just in case you ever need help again." Amma smiled shyly and gave him her number. From that day, George and Amma became friends. They called each other often, and George visited her at the palace. George wasn't just handsome. He was kind, funny, and caring. He came from a wealthy and influential kingdom and treated Amma like a queen. It wasn't long before their friendship blossomed into love. 3 months later, George took Amma on a romantic date by the beachside. The moonlight danced on the water, and the air was filled with the sound of gentle waves. George got down on one knee, holding a small velvet box. "Princess Amma," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You are the most amazing woman I've ever met. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Amma's eyes as she nodded. Yes, I will." Their wedding was the grandest the village had ever seen. Royals, dignitaries, and villagers gathered to celebrate their love. The air was filled with music, laughter, and the sweet aroma of food. Amma looked radiant in her wedding gown, and George couldn't take his eyes off her. On their wedding night, Amma felt nervous but excited. This time she knew it would be different. George was gentle, loving, and attentive. For the first time, Amma felt pure joy in the arms of her husband. Their love story didn't end there. 2 years later, Amma gave birth to beautiful triplets, 2 boys and a girl. The palace was filled with laughter and happiness. Amma finally had the life she had always dreamed of, a life filled with love, peace, and joy.